Hi, Bill Henshaw here, your constitutional kook headquarters, with some more current events and recent news, and a very recent one that's going on now currently in North Carolina. Looks like to me to be the quintessential example of what not to be doing. And on the surface, it would apparently involve, neo-Nazi Ku Klux Klan types on the one hand in Graham, North Carolina, Alamance County, and BLM on the other. But the problem with that is that both sides here are effectively, at least to an extent, invoking martial law rule here to try to get their way. Not only is that not what we need to be doing, it's exactly the opposite. We need to be working together here. So those of you on the BLM side of things have to get over it. As I said on many of my videos, the plain fact of the matter is the sovereign body politic here is lawful de jure jus sanguinis free white state citizens. Unless or until that changes in conformance with the Constitution, not in contravention of it. And as I've frequently been known to opine, the ratification, capital RAT, of the non existent 14th War Amendment violated all 6 articles of the Constitution. And those of you that get my materials that I have available, modestly priced materials that discuss issues like this, send me an email, youwinningcourt@gmail.com. I'll get it to you. I've got an 83-page brief on admission of new states and about a 25-page brief on the 14th Amendment that absolutely blows it apart. It's not there. It has never been there. The 9 old farts in Washington, D.C. contemporaneously ruled it unconstitutional. And that should have been the end of things. As you'll learn, and I will teach you why, that didn't happen because that wasn't the big plans of those New York bankster bastards at 120 Broadway, New York, New York. So that said, we have to work together here. If we get back our lawful de jure, government, Republican form of government, defined and limited powers, it's so much better you can't stand it. And that said, all of us have rights, even though we do belong to the member of the sovereign body politic. That's the way it is for now. That can be changed pursuant to Article 5. But you have to do that very carefully and with precision in order to get it done. Probably not a matter at my age I'll be dealing with, but trust me, anyone that gets on a panel or something like that that is considering that, you have some serious business to do. So that said, what we have to realize is that even inhabitants of territories, for crying out loud, have the right to trial by jury. This is nothing new. It goes back to the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And people have rights generally, not government granted privileges under war acts of Congress. And that's all a civil rights is. Get over it out there at Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. Civil rights wasn't the answer. It was never meant to be the answer. It's a great example of divide and conquer, the kind of BS we have to get rid of and all work together here. Asians, Africans, Americans, all of us. And note, by the way, all the spate of very convenient, quote unquote, hate crimes that are coming down now against Asian Americans, African Americans, anti Semitic stuff. Very convenient, isn't it? And what I would like to know, with the perps that are involved here, is how many of them are ex military and how many of them might have been injected with things while in the military that could cause them to go off on tangents and do these things after they got out, perhaps at the beck and call of their New York bankster bosses. And that's not as far-fetched as it seems now, is it, Bill Gates? From what I'm hearing about the COVID vaccines, if in fact they're not placebos, and they may be at least given to people in certain districts like, Park Street, New York. But if that's true, and if they've gotten to where they can inject things into your body, or they can control you, just like you're a robot, and make things happen at any time, by connecting the dots with what it is they injected into you, and cause this kind of behavior, And hell, I've been in California now 40 years. Never had anything like this. I mean, how convenient is this with all this bullshit divide and conquer they've been doing and wanting to keep this de facto military government in power? And what you have to do is create a need for that. Whether it's anti-Asian American violence, whether it's the COVID crap. I mean, you name it. This government needs emergencies, quote unquote, like this to stay in power. Hell, I've been in a perpetual state of emergency for very arguably 85 years and maybe a lot longer. In fact, one of the things you get from me with just a request for information, I've got some bonus documents. One of them is Senate Report 93-549, Essays on Emergency Powers. And they were complaining in 1974 that the United States had in effect been in the state of one emergency after another for 40 years. An emergency, by the way, declared unilaterally by the president acting as commander in chief of the armed forces, which apparently he's allowed to do under the Banking Act of 1913, the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, 12 USC 95A and B. But the good news for us, and this is what you learn so much from me getting my materials, and send me an email, uwinningcourt@gmail.com. The Federal Reserve Act doesn't exist. It wasn't anything remotely resembling a quorum to do business in either House of Congress at the time, or ratio of representation in the House. And there hasn't been for over 100 years. So therefore, all the laws that appear to be on the books aren't. If one goes into a court with the right standing, the right issues, and gets in front of a common law jury of our peers, you can tear them apart. Not a single damn law exists here, people. That's astounding when you think about it. But trust me, with my decades of intense, passionate, and independent research of my subject matter, I can prove all of it. And I do it with attitude and with authority. Because I got my packet comes to about 800 pages, maybe a little more. And you start filing this in your traffic court, for example, or even in your criminal court, and they can't answer 2 paragraphs. That's why I'm sitting here talking to you today from home rather than being in a South Carolina jail cell rotting away back there in my felony case. Stop the bastards in 30 seconds flat in the initial appearance. That's how good this is. We realize the power we have. And I'm the one standing there alone in a red jail suit, manacled hand and foot. They're the ones in trouble with the law, and everyone knew it. And I would have been back home in April, let alone August, if things hadn't gone differently. That's a video for another day. I know pretty much behind the scenes what happened there. But from day one, they didn't know what to do. The dumbass back there didn't say 2 words to me the entire 5 months I was physically in South Carolina. They didn't have a clue. And that's what I can help you to do in your case. They won't know what to do either. They're going to know it when they see it. They won't fully understand it, which is unfortunate. Even law school graduates who they don't teach either, at Starboard, Dale, UC, Berkeley, you name it, they don't get taught stuff like this anymore. Well, I went out and learned it on my own. 5 decades, I was a bit of a slow learner. I didn't get it overnight either, so don't be disappointed if it doesn't jump right out at you. Although that's my job, is to make it much easier for you rather than do what I did, have to go spend 10,000 hours in the musty old stacks of law library books, to get all this information. It's my job to make that a lot easier, and it really is. And once it all comes together, when I first realized there were no states, that was the final piece of the puzzle. I said, my goodness, everything comes together now, what they're doing and why. And that's what you want to know. You can get out there and teach your kids, teach your posterity, and help them to get out of trouble, or better yet, keep out of trouble with these de facto authorities and all these BS military courts they have and governments that literally don't exist. That's the beauty of what I do. It's why I'll be 73 later this year and my life is ahead of me. That's why. Damn, that's a good feeling. Would have been a lot better if they would have taught me this stuff 50 years ago when I was in high school. And you're going to feel the same way. I mean, my God, they missed so much you can't stand it. And it was intentional. Hasn't been any serious education here in close to 100 years. And it may go back a bit further than that. Although I have my grandmother's hand-me-down textbooks from the late 19th century. And there's some serious stuff in there. God, they would almost look like college textbooks today. And yet, at the time, you only went through grades 1 to 6 for the most part before you got out into the real world at the age of 13 or 14 and did what you were going to do. Yes, they had colleges, but the percent was very low that went into colleges at that time. So you had to get it all in those 6 or 7 years, maybe that you were in school. Sometimes in a one-room schoolhouse. And my grandmother, God rest her soul, was a teacher in the one-room schoolhouse. And she told my mom, bless her heart, when she recognized how smart I was, she said through and through. And wouldn't you know, I just missed it. If she had lived a year longer, I would have been going to Philadelphia for her with a field trip when I was 13. That would have changed my life dramatically there and then. But it never happened. I mean, Constitutional Hall, the whole thing. I would have gotten all that early and would have gotten my own start before I ever got into high school. But it's just one of those things. But better late than never. So here I am, trying to help us all out, and across the board, by the way. Even though, yeah, I use quote unquote white supremacist arguments, but those are the ones that win, and that's what's going to beat them on the other side and get the New York banksters the hell out of our way and get the government back that we're supposed to have. Republican form of government, defined and limited powers, much better. That's where it is we need to go, and to get there, we need to work together and cut all this BS, divide and conquer crap out. Get on the same page, the same issues, have the right status when you go into court, get in front of a common law jury that can rule on the facts and the law and get issues properly before the U.S. Supreme Court. And with the astounding change that's just occurred there in the last month or so, they may be on the verge of doing their job to say what the law is for the first time in 150 years. But they said it, sanctimoniously self-proclaimed. Marbury v. Madison. But Article 3 of the Constitution also provides a mandate to do it, and they know it. What we have to do is make them do it. And we get a couple of cases like that to come out, and it's going to change the whole thing. And with no states, I mean, that's Pandora's box. That's how we get our freedom, liberties, and lives back and put these bastards out of business that are in positions of power now. So, yeah, I got that. And that's why the people, and you'll be hearing from me in Graham, North Carolina, the people in official positions there in Alamance County, North Carolina, and the BLM movement, because it won at the same time to the extent that the Ku Klux Klan types are involved and they use violence and things to try to get their way. That was never good to start with. And there were a lot of bad things happening there. And I make I make apologies for that. I wasn't there, but none of it should have happened. But BLM in this day and age is doing the same thing and saying not only Black Lives Matter, might as well call them BLMM, Black Lives Matter More. And they matter more because we can invoke our rights pursuant to the federal military power of the government and do away with the states, the state jurisdictions, the state constitutions, everything. And that way, yeah, how about that? We're all equal, right? Yeah, we're all equal, not as principal and agents, and that can be done with Article 5 of the Constitution. But the ratification of that 14th War Amendment will reduce us all to guardian and ward, or much more accurately these days, master and slave. There hasn't been a change in status that an educated free man would recognize in the last 160 years. They've just done a beautiful job of covering it up. And I'm out there trying to expose it and to help you to be able to do the same thing and restore our rights and get our government back that we should have. Won't be perfect, but we can at least work from a starting point where we have a lot better chance to get a lot closer to perfection in government, if that's possible at all. But at least get to where we can control it and we tell them what to do. And with the principal and agent relationship, that's how it's supposed to be, isn't it? My wish is your command. That's why we put you in office, to do what it is what we want you to do, and obey the Constitution, the supreme law of this land. That's a hell of a lot better. So this current situation with Alamance County and BLM, it could really work out to be a great thing, because when both sides realize that we should be working together, that's the beginning of the end for the military government, especially with blacks and whites. But it's also true for Asians and other demographics. We just have to have the mindset to get out there and do it all together. That said, to learn how to do it, send me an email, uwinningcourt@gmail.com. I'll send you information on what I have. You're going to absolutely love it. And then we'll be able to go ahead and work together and work out whatever problems it is that you might have. So remember to like the videos, tell your friends, and get the word out. Subscribe to the videos too, by the way. Get the word out, because the quicker we do this and do it together, the quicker we get these bastards out of our lives and get our government, our freedom, and our independence back. Thank you.